Behind every pair of eyes that has ever gazed out from forest shadows or glided through ocean depths lies perhaps the greatest mystery on our planet: another mind. A consciousness as real as your own, thinking thoughts we cannot fathom, experiencing a world we can barely imagine. Consider for a moment the extraordinary nature of what you are doing right now. As you listen to these words, electrical impulses are racing through billions of neurons in your brain, creating the miracle we call consciousness. You are aware, you think, you feel, you remember yesterday and anticipate tomorrow. This remarkable phenomenon that allows you to experience existence itself. This is what we call mind. For 300,000 years, we humans have walked among creatures whose inner worlds remained as distant as the stars. We shared the same forests, the same rivers, the same sky, yet we might as well have been living in separate universes. The barrier between human consciousness and the minds of other species seemed absolute, impenetrable, until one day, in 1960, picture, if you will, a young woman sitting quietly in the dappled light of an African forest. Her name was Jane Goodall, and she had come to study chimpanzees in what is now Gombe National Park in Tanzania. For months, the chimps had fled whenever she approached, but on this particular morning, she watched through her binoculars as a chimpanzee she had named David Greybeard did something that would change our understanding of consciousness forever. David was fishing, not with a rod and line, but with a blade of grass. As Jane watched in amazement, this remarkable creature carefully selected a grass stem, stripped away the leaves with his fingers, and then inserted it into a termite mound. He was making a tool. More than that, he was modifying an object from his environment to serve a purpose that existed only in his mind. In that single moment, the wall between human and animal consciousness cracked. The grass stem wasn't just shaped vegetation. It was proof of planning, of imagination, of a mind that could envision something that didn't yet exist and then bring it into being. David Greybeard was thinking. This discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Until that moment, toolmaking was considered the defining characteristic that separated humans from all other life on Earth. Man the toolmaker, we called ourselves. But here was David, fashioning implements with the same deliberate intention that our ancestors had shown when they first chipped flint into arrowheads. Jane's mentor, the famous paleontologist Louis Leakey, captured the magnitude of this moment perfectly when he told her, "Now we must redefine tool, redefine man, or accept chimpanzees as beings like ourselves." The implications rippled through anthropology, psychology, and philosophy. If chimpanzees could think abstractly enough to create tools, what other cognitive abilities might they possess? What other species might harbor minds more sophisticated than we had ever imagined? But David Greybeard was just the beginning. In the decades since Jane's groundbreaking observation, we have discovered that consciousness is not the exclusive province of humanity. It flows through the natural world like an underground river, surfacing in the most unexpected places. Elephants mourn their dead, holding vigils that last for days. Dolphins call each other by name. Crows fashion hooks from wire with the precision of master craftsmen. Octopuses solve puzzles that would challenge a human child. Each discovery has brought us closer to a profound realization. We are not alone in our awareness. We are part of a vast community of minds, each experiencing existence in ways we are only beginning to understand. The silence between species was never really silence at all, but a conversation we simply hadn't learned to hear. Today, we stand at the threshold of the ultimate discovery, armed with brain scanners that can reveal thoughts in real time and computers that can translate the clicks and whistles of dolphins. We are finally beginning to bridge the gap between human and animal consciousness. We are learning to decode the languages of creatures who have been trying to communicate with us all along. Imagine what it would be like to experience the world through the senses of a migrating bird, navigating by magnetic fields you could actually see. Picture the mental landscape of a whale diving 3,000 feet into the crushing darkness of the deep ocean, hunting by sound alone. Consider the calculations running through a crow's brain as it bends a piece of wire into exactly the right shape to extract food from a narrow tube. These are not mere reflexes or programmed behaviors. These are minds at work. Alien minds, perhaps, but minds nonetheless. Each species has evolved its own unique way of being conscious, its own particular method of experiencing the universe. Octopus thinks with its arms. The elephant processes emotions with temporal lobes 40% larger than our own. The dolphin sees with sound, creating three-dimensional images by bouncing clicks off objects in its environment. Each of these ways of being conscious is a masterpiece of evolution, honed over millions of years. They represent different solutions to the fundamental challenge of awareness: how to process information, make decisions, and navigate through a complex world. But perhaps the most remarkable discovery is how these different forms of consciousness communicate. Animals don't just think, they share their thoughts with others. Bees perform intricate dances that convey the location, distance, and quality of food sources with mathematical precision. Prairie dogs have developed a vocabulary of over 100 distinct calls, including what can only be described as adjectives. Whales gather in family groups called clans, each with its own dialect of clicks, calls that are passed down through generations like cultural traditions. What could these deep-diving giants be talking about? Perhaps they share memories of the abyssal plains where they hunt, describing the ghostly landscapes that exist in perpetual darkness. Maybe they exchange information about the ancient migration routes their ancestors have followed for millions of years. Or perhaps they discuss concepts so removed from human experience that we lack even the vocabulary to contemplate them. This is the frontier we now explore, not the geography of distant planets, but the landscapes of alien minds that share our own planet. We are cartographers of consciousness, mapping territories that exist not in space, but in the infinite realm of thought and awareness. The tools at our disposal would have seemed like magic to earlier generations. Brain imaging technology allows us to watch neurons firing in real time, revealing the very moment when a decision forms in an animal's mind. Artificial intelligence helps us decode the complex patterns in animal communication, translating songs and calls that have remained mysterious for millennia. The implications stretch far beyond the realm of science. We are approaching a transformation as profound as when Copernicus revealed that Earth was not the center of the universe. We are discovering that human consciousness is not the pinnacle of awareness, but one note in a vast symphony of minds. Each species contributes its own irreplaceable voice to this cosmic chorus. The songs of whales resonating through ocean basins, the dances of bees mapping flower meadows, the conversations of elephants rippling through the African savanna. The question is no longer whether animals think and feel. The evidence is overwhelming. They do. The question now is what thoughts and feelings we have been missing all along. What wisdom waits in the migration patterns of Arctic terns who see both poles each year? What ancient knowledge is encoded in the social structures of ant colonies that have remained unchanged for 100 million years? What profound truths about existence itself might be hidden in the dreams of elephants sleeping under the infinite African stars? As we stand on the brink of these discoveries, we must prepare ourselves for revelations that will challenge everything we thought we knew about consciousness, intelligence, and our place in the community of minds that is life on Earth. The final frontier is not outer space, it is the inner space of consciousness itself. And we are about to take our first steps into this undiscovered country, guided by the very creatures we once thought were beyond our understanding. 500 million years ago, in the warm, shallow seas of the Cambrian period, something extraordinary happened. The first eye opened, not merely sensing light like the primitive photoreceptors that had existed for eons before, but truly seeing, processing visual information, recognizing shapes, tracking movement across the watery landscape. This moment represents one of the most profound turning points in the history of consciousness on Earth. With vision came the need to process what was seen, to remember what was important, to make split-second decisions about whether that shadow represented food or predator. In that ancient ocean, awareness bloomed like an explosion across the planet's waters. Consider what it means to see. Light bounces off objects, travels through space, enters your eye, and somehow becomes an image in your mind. But that transformation from photons to perception requires something far more mysterious than any camera or computer can achieve. It requires consciousness, the ineffable quality that turns mere data into experience. The creatures of the Cambrian seas faced a challenge that would drive the evolution of mind itself. Suddenly, predators could spot prey from a distance. Prey needed to recognize danger before it struck. The ancient arms race between hunter and hunted became a race to develop better brains, more sophisticated awareness, more cunning intelligence. Yet consciousness didn't evolve along a single path toward greater complexity. Instead, it branched and diverged, creating a magnificent diversity of ways to be aware. Each lineage found its own solution to the fundamental challenge of processing information and navigating through a world of constant change. Take the jellyfish, those ethereal pulsing bells that drift through our oceans like living ghosts. They have no central brain, no head, no discrete thinking organ at all. Instead, they possess something called a nerve net, a distributed network of neurons spread throughout their translucent bodies. When a jellyfish encounters food, electrical signals ripple across this network like waves across a pond, coordinating the creature's movements without any central command. This represents consciousness in its most alien form. Awareness without a headquarters, decision-making without a decider. The jellyfish doesn't think about hunting in the way we understand thinking. Instead, its entire body becomes a thinking system, processing information through the collective behavior of thousands of interconnected nerve cells. Watch a jellyfish pulse through the water, and you're witnessing something remarkable, a mind distributed through space rather than concentrated in a skull. It's a form of consciousness so different from our own that it challenges our very definition of what it means to think. Yet this ancient neural architecture has proven remarkably successful, unchanged for over 600 million years. But the true masters of distributed consciousness are the octopuses. These remarkable creatures represent one of evolution's most extraordinary experiments in intelligence. While our consciousness flows from a single, centralized brain, an octopus thinks with its entire body. Of the octopus's 500 million neurons, a number that rivals many vertebrates. Fully 2/3 reside not in its head, but in its 8 arms. Each limb contains its own cluster of nerve cells, essentially functioning as an independent brain with its own sensory capabilities and decision-making processes. Imagine having 8 separate thinking centers distributed throughout your body, each capable of acting autonomously while somehow coordinating with the others. When an octopus explores a coral reef, each arm investigates different crevices simultaneously, tasting and touching, and learning about the environment through parallel channels of awareness. The most extraordinary demonstration of this distributed intelligence comes from a disturbing but revealing experiment. When an octopus arm is severed, whether through predation or scientific study, it continues to hunt for up to an hour. The arm's neurons seek out prey independently, grasping and manipulating objects as if guided by a mind that no longer has a body. This is consciousness as we have never conceived it, not the unified stream of awareness that flows through human experience, but a confederation of minds working in concert. The octopus challenges our most basic assumptions about what intelligence looks like and how awareness can be organized. Recent research has revealed even more startling aspects of octopus consciousness. These creatures can change not just their color, but their entire skin texture in less than a second, transforming from smooth pink to spiky brown coral. This isn't just camouflage, it's a form of communication, a visual language that flickers across their bodies like thoughts made visible. When octopuses dream, and research suggests they do enter REM-like sleep states, their skin ripples with waves of color and pattern. Are they reliving the day's hunts, processing memories, or experiencing something altogether beyond our understanding? The octopus dream remains one of the most tantalizing mysteries in consciousness research. Yet even more startling is the evolutionary journey that brought birds to consciousness. 65 million years ago, when an asteroid ended the age of dinosaurs, a small group of their descendants survived the catastrophe. These early birds inherited something remarkable from their reptilian ancestors, brains with an entirely different architecture from mammalian minds. While our consciousness emerges from the layered structure of the neocortex, birds evolved something called the pallium, a nuclear organization that processes information in dense clusters rather than sheets of tissue. This alien neural architecture produces intelligence in a package light enough to fly, yet powerful enough to rival our own cognitive abilities. The numbers are staggering. In a bird's brain, neurons pack 40 times more densely than in mammalian brains of similar size. A crow's walnut-sized brain contains as many thinking cells as a monkey brain, 10 times larger. This incredible neural density allows birds to achieve remarkable feats of intelligence while maintaining the weight restrictions necessary for flight. When researchers first tested New Caledonian crows in laboratory settings, they were unprepared for what they discovered. These birds could solve puzzles requiring 8 sequential steps, a cognitive feat matched only by 7-year-old human children. They fashion hooks from straight wire, bend them to precisely the right angle, and use them to extract food from narrow tubes. Most remarkably, they can plan several moves ahead, understanding that completing one task will give them the tools necessary for the next. This represents what psychologists call metacognition, thinking about thinking, the ability to reflect on one's own mental processes. But perhaps the most extraordinary avian minds belong to Clark's nutcrackers. These unassuming birds face a cognitive challenge that would overwhelm most humans. Each autumn, a single nutcracker hides between 20 and 30,000 pine seeds across hundreds of square miles of mountain terrain. 6 months later, after snow has buried the landscape and transformed familiar landmarks, they return to recover 90% of their caches. To accomplish this feat, the nutcracker's brain undergoes a remarkable transformation. Their hippocampus, the brain region responsible for spatial memory, physically expands by 30% during caching season. It's as if their minds literally grow to accommodate the vast spatial database they must maintain through the harsh mountain winter. Consider the scale of this achievement: 30,000 locations, each pinpointed with GPS-like precision, stored in a brain no larger than a walnut. The nutcracker must remember not just where each cache is located, but which seeds are stored there, how many remain, and which sites are most likely to be discovered by competitors. This represents one of the most sophisticated memory systems known to science, far exceeding human capabilities. Yet the nutcracker accomplishes it using neural machinery that weighs less than a paperclip, demonstrating that consciousness can achieve extraordinary feats through radically different organizational principles. Meanwhile, in Africa, Elephants were solving the challenge of consciousness through sheer scale. Their brains, weighing up to 6 kilograms, are the largest of any land animal. But size alone doesn't explain their remarkable intelligence. What makes elephant consciousness unique is the specialization of their temporal lobes, brain regions 40% larger than our own, dedicated to processing the complex social and acoustic information that governs elephant society. Elephants live in a world of infrasonic communication, sounds too low for human ears to detect. These deep rumbles can travel 30 miles through the ground and air, allowing entire herds to coordinate their movements across vast distances. When an elephant matriarch sends out a contact call, families scattered across hundreds of square miles can respond, converging at waterholes or fleeing from danger in perfect synchronization. But elephants use these infrasonic calls for more than simple coordination. Researchers have identified distinct vocal patterns for different types of information, calls that mean, "let's move," others that signal predator nearby, and still others that seem to convey emotional states like grief or joy. Elephant communication represents a complex language of low-frequency signals, creating acoustic landscapes invisible to human perception. The emotional depth of elephant consciousness reveals itself most powerfully in their response to death. When an elephant dies, family members gather around the body, touching it gently with their trunks, sometimes carrying the bones of deceased relatives for miles. Young elephants have been observed trying to lift fallen elders, refusing to abandon them even when the herd must move on. These behaviors suggest something profound. Not just intelligence, but empathy, grief, and perhaps even a concept of mortality. Elephants appear to understand death in ways that few animals do, mourning their losses with rituals that echo our own deepest emotional responses. Recent studies have revealed that elephants maintain mental maps of their territories that span thousands of square miles, remembering the locations of water sources, seasonal feeding grounds, and safe passages between habitats. Matriarchs carry this knowledge in their massive temporal lobes, serving as living libraries for their extended families. During droughts, these mental maps become matters of life and death. The oldest females remember dry seasons from decades past, leading their families to water sources that younger elephants have never seen. This represents a form of cultural transmission, knowledge passed down through generations, not through genes, but through the accumulated wisdom of elder minds. Yet perhaps the most remarkable tale of consciousness evolution comes from an unexpected partnership between humans and dogs. 15,000 years ago, when our ancestors first welcomed wolves into their camps, they began an evolutionary experiment that would reshape the minds of both species. Modern dogs represent the most successful example of interspecies communication in Earth's history. Through millennia of coevolution, dogs have developed the ability to read human emotions with uncanny accuracy. They can follow our pointing gestures, a skill that even our closest relatives, the chimpanzees, struggle to master. In 2014, researchers made a stunning discovery about the nature of dog consciousness. Using brain imaging technology, they found that dogs process human speech in the same regions where humans process language. The left hemisphere analyzing words, while the right hemisphere processes emotional intonation. This represents a remarkable convergence of consciousness across species boundaries, shaped by thousands of generations of shared evolution. Dogs have literally evolved brain structures specialized for understanding human communication, while humans have developed enhanced abilities to interpret canine body language and vocalizations. But the partnership has changed human minds as well. Studies show that when humans and dogs gaze into each other's eyes, both species release oxytocin, the same hormone involved in maternal bonding. We have literally evolved to love each other, creating emotional connections that transcend the boundaries between species. Each of these evolutionary pathways represents a different answer to the fundamental question of how to be conscious in a complex world. The distributed intelligence of octopuses, the compressed brilliance of bird brains, the acoustic mastery of elephants, the interspecies empathy of dogs, all demonstrate that consciousness is not a single phenomenon, but a vast spectrum of possibilities. Yet, as we trace these diverse evolutionary journeys, we begin to see patterns. Consciousness doesn't emerge randomly. It evolves in response to specific environmental challenges. The need to navigate three-dimensional space drives spatial intelligence. Social complexity demands emotional sophistication. Predator-prey relationships reward quick decision-making and pattern recognition. But there's something else, something more mysterious. Across all these different lineages, consciousness seems to push beyond mere survival needs. Elephants mourn in ways that serve no obvious biological function. Dolphins play with bubble rings for pure enjoyment. Crows engage in behaviors that can only be described as mischievous. This suggests that consciousness itself, the capacity for subjective experience, may be more than just an evolutionary accident. Perhaps awareness, once it emerges, has its own momentum, its own drive toward greater complexity and richer experience. As we stand at the threshold of understanding these alien forms of consciousness, we face a humbling realization: human intelligence is not the pinnacle of evolution. It's simply one note in a vast symphony of awareness that has been playing for 500 million years. The melody is far from over, and we are only just beginning to listen to the full composition. In 1979, a young researcher named Irene Pepperberg walked into a pet store in Chicago with a simple goal: to find a bird that could challenge everything we thought we knew about animal intelligence. Among the rows of cages filled with colorful parrots, one African grey caught her attention. She named him Alex, an acronym for Avian Language Experiment, never imagining that this single bird would revolutionize our understanding of animal communication and cognition. What happened over the next 30 years would shatter the barriers between human and animal minds in ways that still leave scientists amazed. Alex didn't just mimic human words, he understood them. When shown a blue key and asked, "What color?" he would answer correctly. When presented with different objects and asked, "What's different?" he could identify whether they varied by color, shape, or material. He learned to count, to express preferences, even to ask for things he wanted. But perhaps the most extraordinary moment came on the night before Alex died. As Irene prepared to leave the laboratory, the bird looked at her with those intelligent dark eyes and spoke his final words. "You be good. See you tomorrow. I love you." These weren't random sounds or programmed responses. They were the deliberate communications of a mind that understood not just language, but the emotional weight of words. In that moment, Alex bridged the gap between species with the most human of gifts, the expression of love. Alex's story represents something profound about the nature of communication itself. For too long, we assumed that language was the exclusive domain of humanity, that only we possessed the cognitive machinery necessary to assign meaning to sounds and symbols. But Alex proved that the capacity for symbolic communication runs far deeper through the animal kingdom than we ever imagined. The implications of Alex's abilities extended far beyond simple word recognition. He could count up to 6, identify shapes and colors, and even understand concepts like bigger and smaller. When shown a tray of mixed objects and asked, "What color is the square?" he could correctly identify the color of the square object among triangles and circles of different hues. More remarkably, Alex demonstrated what linguists call referential communication, the ability to use symbols to refer to things not immediately present. He could ask for foods that weren't visible, request to go to specific locations, and even comment on future events. This represents a level of abstract thinking that was once considered uniquely human. Yet Alex was not alone. Across the natural world, creatures have been developing sophisticated communication systems for millions of years. Languages without words that convey information with precision that rivals human speech. Consider the dolphins, those masters of the acoustic realm. In the 1970s, researchers made a discovery that would transform our understanding of marine intelligence. Each dolphin, they found, creates a unique sound pattern during its first year of life, a signature whistle that serves as its name for the rest of its existence. Imagine the implications of this discovery. While human children learn their names from others, dolphins essentially name themselves, creating individual acoustic identities that they carry throughout their lives. When researchers played recordings of these signature whistles underwater, dolphins responded only to their own names or those of close family members, proving beyond doubt that they possessed not just communication, but individual identity. But dolphin communication extends far beyond simple identification. These acoustic virtuosos have developed a complex language of clicks, whistles, and burst pulse sounds that allows them to coordinate hunts, express emotions, and share information about their environment. When dolphins hunt together, they use specific call patterns to organize their attack, communicating roles and timing with military precision. Recent research has revealed that dolphins possess what can only be called accents, regional variations in their communication patterns that persist across generations. Dolphins from different regions of the same ocean use distinct vocal patterns, much like human communities develop local dialects. Young dolphins must learn these regional languages from their mothers, practicing for months before they master the proper accent of their pod. Most remarkably, dolphins can see each other's thoughts through sound. Their echolocation is so sophisticated that they can detect the emotional state of another dolphin by analyzing how sound reflects off muscle tension patterns. When a dolphin is stressed, its muscles contract in subtle ways that create unique acoustic signatures. Other dolphins can literally hear these emotions, creating a form of empathic communication that transcends anything humans have achieved. This ability extends to their interactions with other species. Dolphins can echolocate through human bodies, detecting pregnancy, internal injuries, and emotional states through the reflection of their sonar clicks. They seem to understand that humans are different from themselves, yet they continue to communicate with us using simplified versions of their natural vocalizations. Yet, for sheer linguistic complexity, few animal communication systems can match that of the prairie dogs. These seemingly simple rodents have developed what can only be described as a complete language, with over 100 distinct calls that convey remarkably specific information. Prairie dogs don't just have alarm calls for different types of predators. They have descriptive language that includes what linguists call adjectives. They have different calls for tall human in blue shirt versus short human in yellow shirt. When researchers walked through prairie dog colonies wearing novel clothing combinations the animals had never seen before, the prairie dogs created new call patterns, essentially coining new words to describe the unfamiliar. This represents true linguistic creativity, the ability to combine existing elements of language to create new meanings. It's a cognitive skill that human children don't master until they're several years old, yet prairie dogs demonstrate it as a matter of daily survival. The precision of prairie dog communication is staggering. They can describe not just the type and size of approaching predators, but their speed, direction of approach, and even their apparent intentions. When a hawk circles overhead, prairie dog sentries provide real-time updates on its movements, allowing the colony to coordinate their escape responses with remarkable efficiency. But perhaps the most elegant communication system in the natural world belongs to the honeybees. In their famous waggle dance, these tiny insects have developed a form of symbolic communication that would challenge the best human mathematicians. When a scout bee discovers a rich source of nectar, she returns to the hive with information encoded in movement. The angle of her figure-8 dance indicates the direction of the food source relative to the sun's position. The duration of her waggle run communicates the distance with remarkable precision. Each second of dancing represents approximately 1 kilometer of flight. The vigor of her movements tells other bees about the quality of the nectar, while specific pheromones indicate what type of flowers they'll find. This is not instinct in any simple sense. It's abstract symbolic representation. The bee is using her body to create a map in space and time, communicating complex three-dimensional information through a two-dimensional dance. It's a cognitive achievement that human children wouldn't master until they were well into elementary school. What makes the bee's dance even more remarkable is its mathematical sophistication. Bees must compensate for the sun's movement during their flight, adjusting their directional signals to account for the changing position of their celestial reference point. They're performing complex calculations in real time, updating their spatial coordinates as they communicate. The dance language of bees also demonstrates remarkable flexibility. When nectar sources are nearby, bees perform a simplified version called the round dance. For distant sources, they switch to the waggle dance with its precise directional and distance information. They can even communicate about food sources that are above or below the hive, adjusting their dance patterns to indicate three-dimensional locations. Yet even this pales beside the mysteries of whale communication. In the depths of our oceans, the largest brains on Earth engage in conversations that stretch our understanding of what communication can be. Sperm whales organize themselves into family groups called clans, each with its own dialect of clicks and calls. These acoustic patterns are passed down through generations like cultural traditions, creating underwater societies with distinct languages that persist for decades. When researchers recorded these whale conversations, they discovered elaborate click sequences lasting for hours, discussions whose meaning remains tantalizingly beyond our comprehension. The complexity of whale communication becomes even more intriguing when we consider their massive brains. A sperm whale's brain weighs 17 pounds, 6 times larger than a human brain. With neural processing power of that magnitude, their thoughts and communications might operate on scales we can barely imagine. Humpback whales add another dimension to cetacean communication. They sing. These haunting melodies can last for hours and travel across entire ocean basins. Each population of humpbacks has its own song, which evolves gradually over time like a musical tradition. Males seem to compete to create the most elaborate performances, adding new phrases and variations in a kind of underwater jazz improvisation. Recent analysis of humpback songs has revealed sophisticated musical structures. The songs contain repeated themes, variations on basic motifs, and even rhyme schemes where certain sound patterns repeat at regular intervals. This suggests that whale songs aren't just functional communications, but may represent a form of artistic expression. But whale songs aren't just beautiful, they're functional. Recent research suggests that these long-distance calls help whales navigate across the trackless ocean, using acoustic landmarks to find their way along migration routes that span thousands of miles. They're essentially singing themselves across the sea, using their voices to create maps of sound that guide them through the watery wilderness. The discovery of such sophisticated communication systems across the animal kingdom forces us to confront a humbling reality. We have been surrounded by conversations we couldn't understand, immersed in a babel of languages we never knew existed. Birds, it turns out, have regional dialects, just like human communities. White-crowned sparrows in San Francisco sing differently from their cousins in Los Angeles, with distinct local variations that persist across generations. Young birds must learn these songs from their elders, practicing for months before they master the proper accent of their neighborhood. Some bird species take vocal learning extraordinary lengths. Lyrebirds of Australia can perfectly mimic any sound in their environment, not just other bird calls, but chainsaws, car alarms, even human speech. They weave these borrowed sounds into elaborate performances that can last for hours, creating acoustic collages that serve as both mating displays and territorial declarations. The mockingbird represents another master of vocal mimicry, capable of learning and reproducing over 200 different songs. But they don't just copy, they innovate, creating new combinations and variations that become part of their local song traditions. Young mockingbirds learn these complex repertoires from multiple teachers, building vast libraries of vocalizations that they use throughout their lives. Even more remarkably, some birds use tools as extensions of their communication systems. Woodpeckers drum on hollow trees not just to find insects, but to send messages to other woodpeckers. The rhythm, intensity, and duration of their drumming conveys information about their identity, territory, and intentions. They're essentially playing percussion instruments to communicate across the forest. Elephants, with their massive brains and complex social structures, have developed communication systems that operate across multiple sensory channels simultaneously. Their famous trumpet calls are just the tip of the iceberg. Much of elephant communication happens in the infrasonic range, sounds too low for human ears to detect. These deep rumbles can travel for 30 miles, allowing elephant families to coordinate their movements across vast territories. But elephants don't just hear these calls, they feel them through their feet and trunks, detecting vibrations that travel through the ground. An elephant matriarch can literally feel the footsteps of her family members miles away, monitoring their movements through seismic communication that turns the earth itself into a telephone network. The emotional richness of elephant communication becomes apparent in their responses to death and danger. When an elephant dies, family members gather around the body, touching it gently with their trunks, while producing low-frequency calls that seem to express grief. Young elephants have been observed trying to lift fallen elders, calling to them with increasingly distressed vocalizations that sound heartbreakingly like pleas for the dead to return. Elephants also demonstrate remarkable vocal learning abilities. They can imitate the calls of other elephant families, essentially learning to speak different elephant dialects. In some cases, elephants have been observed mimicking human speech patterns, producing sounds that approximate words in local human languages. This suggests a level of vocal flexibility and social intelligence that rivals the great apes. These discoveries force us to reconsider our entire conception of language and communication. We once thought that only humans could use symbols, create new meanings, and express complex emotions through vocalization. But the evidence suggests that the capacity for symbolic communication is woven throughout the fabric of life itself. Perhaps most intriguingly, we're beginning to discover that some animals can learn human languages with remarkable facility. Kanzi, a bonobo who learned to communicate through symbolic keyboards, can understand spoken English with the comprehension level of a 2.5-year-old child. He follows complex instructions, engages in conversations about past and future events, and even makes requests for activities he wants to do. Coco, the famous gorilla who learned sign language, expanded our understanding of animal consciousness in profound ways. She didn't just learn signs, she created poetry with them. She called a zebra a white tiger, described a mask as an eye hat, and when asked to describe herself, signed fine animal person. These weren't mistakes or random combinations, they were creative uses of language that revealed a mind capable of metaphorical thinking. As we stand at the threshold of understanding these diverse communication systems, we face a profound question. If animals possess such sophisticated languages, why haven't we been able to communicate with them before now? The answer lies partly in our own limitations. Human language relies heavily on vocal signals in a narrow frequency range, using linear sequences of sounds to convey meaning. But animal languages often operate through multiple sensory channels simultaneously, combining vocalizations with body language, chemical signals, and even electrical fields. But technology is finally giving us the tools to break down these barriers. Artificial intelligence programs can now analyze the complex patterns in animal vocalizations, identifying subtle variations that human ears cannot detect. Computer algorithms have discovered that prairie dogs have specific calls for different colored objects, that dolphins use signature whistles in ways that parallel human name usage, and that elephants coordinate group movements through infrasonic conversations that span continents. The implications of these discoveries extend far beyond scientific curiosity. If animals possess genuine languages, if they can express thoughts and emotions through symbolic communication, then they are not merely biological machines responding to stimuli. They are beings with inner lives as rich and complex as our own, deserving of moral consideration and respect. As we decode these languages of the wild, we approach a transformation as profound as any in human history. We are about to join a conversation that has been going on for millions of years, a global dialogue between minds that share our planet but experience it in ways we are only beginning to understand. Inside a crow's walnut-sized brain, neurons pack so densely that this tiny space contains as many thinking cells as a monkey brain, 10 times larger. When scientists mapped corvid brains in 2013, they discovered that these birds had achieved consciousness through convergent evolution, developing similar capabilities through completely different structures than mammals. The implications of this discovery are staggering. It means that nature has found multiple pathways to awareness, multiple solutions to the fundamental challenge of creating a thinking mind. While mammal intelligence centers in the layered neocortex, birds evolved the pallium, a nuclear organization that processes information in clusters rather than sheets. This alien architecture produces remarkable results. Clark's nutcrackers hide 30,000 pine seeds across hundreds of square miles each autumn. And remember 90% of locations 6 months later. Their hippocampus physically expands 30% during caching season, literally growing to accommodate the vast spatial database they must maintain through winter. But the nutcracker's achievement becomes even more impressive when we consider the cognitive demands of their task. They must remember not just where each cache is located, but what type of seeds are stored there, how many remain, and which sites are most likely to be discovered by competitors. They track the passage of time, knowing which caches contain seeds that will spoil first. They even seem to plan for future needs, storing different types of food in different microenvironments based on seasonal availability. This represents one of the most sophisticated memory systems known to science. The nutcracker's brain creates detailed mental maps that would challenge the best human cartographers, all while maintaining the weight restrictions necessary for flight. It's a testament to the efficiency of the avian neural architecture, consciousness compressed into the smallest possible package while losing none of its power. Crows and their relatives have taken this compressed intelligence in different directions. New Caledonian crows fashion tools with the same deliberate craftsmanship that our ancestors showed when making stone implements. They select the right materials, modify them precisely, and even manufacture different tool types for different tasks. Most remarkably, they can plan several steps ahead, understanding that completing one task will give them the tools necessary for the next. In laboratory tests, these birds have demonstrated abilities that rival human children. When presented with puzzles requiring multiple steps, lifting a bucket with a hooked stick to get a stone, then dropping the stone into a tube to release food. Crows can solve them on the first try. They seem to understand cause and effect relationships at a level that suggests true reasoning rather than trial and error learning. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of corvid intelligence is their apparent understanding of death. Crows conduct what can only be described as funerals, gathering around deceased members of their community and producing specific vocalizations that seem to serve as calls to assembly. These gatherings can last for hours and involve dozens of individuals, suggesting a level of social coordination and emotional response that challenges our assumptions about bird consciousness. The neural efficiency of bird brains extends beyond corvids. African grey parrots like Alex pack extraordinary cognitive abilities into brains no larger than a shelled walnut. They can understand abstract concepts like same and different, count objects up to 6, and even demonstrate what appears to be a sense of humour, playfully mislabeling objects when they want attention. The parrot brain represents another solution to the challenge of creating consciousness in a lightweight package. While crows excel at tool use and spatial memory, parrots have specialized in vocal learning and social intelligence. They can learn new sounds throughout their lives, something that most mammals cannot do after early development. This vocal flexibility has allowed parrots to develop complex communication systems in the wild. Amazon parrots have distinct names, unique call signatures that identify individuals within their flocks. They can modify these calls to indicate emotional states, territorial claims, and social relationships. Some species even seem to use what linguists call contact calls, simple vocalizations that maintain group cohesion during flight. At the other extreme of neural architecture, octopuses represent consciousness distributed across their entire body. With 500 million neurons, more than many vertebrates, they have created a form of awareness that challenges our most basic assumptions about how minds can be organized. In the octopus nervous system, 2/3 of all neurons reside not in the central brain, but in the 8 arms. Each arm contains its own cluster of nerve cells that can process sensory information, make decisions, and control movement independently. When an octopus explores its environment, it's literally thinking with its whole body. This distributed architecture allows for remarkable multitasking abilities. An octopus can search for food with 6 arms while using the other 2 to build a shelter, each set of limbs operating under independent neural control while somehow coordinating with the central brain. It's consciousness as parallel processing, multiple streams of awareness flowing simultaneously through a single organism. The independence of octopus arms becomes apparent in their response to injury. When an arm is damaged or lost, the remaining limbs immediately compensate, taking over the lost arm's functions without any apparent learning period. The neural circuits seem to possess built-in redundancy and flexibility that allows for instant reorganization of the distributed mind. But octopuses have also evolved another remarkable feature of consciousness, the ability to change their appearance to match their thoughts. Their chromatophores, specialized skin cells that control color and texture, are directly connected to their nervous system. When an octopus thinks about camouflage, its skin instantly reflects that thought, transforming to match the surrounding environment. This creates a unique window into the octopus mind. Researchers have observed sleeping octopuses cycling through elaborate patterns of color and texture, suggesting that they experience something analogous to dreams. Their skin becomes a direct expression of neural activity, making their thoughts visible in ways that no other animal can achieve. The octopus demonstrates yet another alien feature of consciousness, the ability to taste with their entire body. Each arm is covered with chemoreceptors that can identify substances by touch, essentially allowing the octopus to taste everything it touches. This creates a sensory experience completely foreign to Poe. vertebrate consciousness, a world where flavor and texture are inseparable, where touching an object immediately reveals its chemical composition. Moving to yet another branch of consciousness, evolution, elephant brains represent the triumph of scale. At 6 kilograms, an elephant brain is the largest of any land animal, but its size serves specific purposes related to the complex social and environmental challenges these giants face. The elephant hippocampus is not only proportionally larger than in other mammals, but it's also organized differently. While human hippocampi are relatively simple structures, elephant hippocampi contain elaborate folding patterns that vastly increase their surface area. This neural real estate is dedicated to processing spatial and temporal information on scales that dwarf human capabilities. Elephants maintain mental maps of their territories that can span thousands of square miles. These maps include not just spatial information, but temporal data. When different areas have water, which routes are safest during different seasons, where food will be available at various times of year. Matriarchs carry this knowledge in their expanded temporal lobes, serving as living libraries for their extended families. The social brain of elephants is equally impressive. Their temporal lobes contain specialized neural circuits for processing the complex social hierarchies that govern elephant society. They can recognize hundreds of individual elephants by sight, sound, and smell, maintaining detailed social maps that track relationships, alliances, and family histories spanning generations. Recent research has revealed that elephants possess what scientists call episodic memory, the ability to remember specific events from their past and project themselves into imagined future scenarios. This creates a form of time travel in consciousness, allowing elephants to learn from past experiences and plan for future challenges. The elephant's emotional brain is perhaps its most remarkable feature. Their enlarged limbic system processes emotions with a complexity that rivals human emotional experience. Elephants demonstrate empathy, grief, joy, and even what appears to be a sense of humor. They console distressed family members, celebrate births, and mourn deaths with rituals that suggest deep emotional understanding. This emotional sophistication extends to their relationships with other species. Elephants have been observed helping injured animals, including humans, suggesting a capacity for cross-species empathy that goes beyond simple social instincts. They seem to understand suffering as a universal experience, responding to distress regardless of its source. Meanwhile, the dolphin brain represents yet another solution to the challenge of consciousness. One optimized for life in a three-dimensional aquatic environment. Dolphin brains are highly folded, with more surface area relative to size than even human brains. This folding pattern allows for maximum neural density while maintaining the streamlined head shape necessary for efficient swimming. The dolphin auditory cortex is massively enlarged compared to terrestrial mammals, reflecting their dependence on echolocation for navigation and hunting. But this acoustic processing power creates sensory experiences that we can barely imagine. Dolphins can see through sound, creating detailed three-dimensional images of their environment by bouncing clicks off objects and analyzing the returning echoes. This echolocation ability extends to social interactions. Dolphins can echolocate through each other's bodies, detecting emotional states through muscle tension patterns. They can identify pregnant females, locate injuries, and even sense the internal structure of unfamiliar objects. It's a form of sensory perception that allows dolphins to know their companions more intimately than any purely visual creature could achieve. The dolphin brain also shows remarkable specializations for processing temporal information. They can distinguish between sounds separated by microseconds, allowing them to locate objects with extraordinary precision using echolocation. This temporal acuity creates a consciousness that operates on timescales far faster than human awareness. Dolphin sleep presents another fascinating aspect of their neural architecture. Unlike most mammals, dolphins never completely lose consciousness. Instead, they shut down one brain hemisphere at a time, allowing them to maintain awareness of their environment while still getting necessary rest. This creates a form of consciousness that never fully disappears, a mind that remains partially awake throughout life. But perhaps the most intriguing development in consciousness architecture comes from an unexpected source: the partnership between human and dog brains. 15,000 years of coevolution have created neural specializations in both species for interspecies communication. In 2014, researchers made a stunning discovery about dog consciousness. Using functional magnetic resonance imaging, they found that dogs process human speech in the same brain regions where humans process language. The left hemisphere analyzes word meaning, while the right hemisphere processes emotional tone, exactly the same division of labor found in human brains. This represents convergent evolution of language processing across species boundaries. Dogs have literally evolved neural circuits specialized for understanding human communication, while humans have developed enhanced abilities to interpret canine body language and vocalizations. The dog-human bond has also created unique emotional neural circuits in both species. When dogs and humans gaze into each other's eyes, both release oxytocin, the same hormone involved in maternal bonding. Brain imaging studies show that dogs activate the same neural reward pathways when seeing their human companions that human parents activate when seeing their children. This neural synchronization extends to stress responses. Dogs and their human companions show synchronized cortisol patterns throughout the day, suggesting that their nervous systems have become coupled at a hormonal level. They literally share emotional states through biochemical communication. Recent research has revealed that dogs possess what scientists call theory of mind, the ability to understand that other beings have thoughts and intentions different from their own. Dogs can follow human pointing gestures, understand when humans can or cannot see them, and even engage in deceptive behaviors that suggest they understand human mental states. As we survey these diverse architectures of awareness, we begin to see patterns in how consciousness can be organized. The centralized processing of mammalian brains, the distributed networks of octopus intelligence, the compressed efficiency of bird cognition, the massive temporal processing of elephant minds. Each represents a different solution to the fundamental challenge of being aware in a complex world. Yet perhaps the most remarkable discovery is how flexible these architectures can be. Consciousness doesn't require a single type of brain or neural organization. It emerges wherever sufficient complexity and integration allow for the processing of information, the formation of memories, and the creation of behavioral responses. This suggests that consciousness may be a more fundamental feature of complex systems than we previously imagined. As we continue to study the neural architectures of awareness, we may discover that the capacity for conscious experience is built into the very fabric of information processing itself, waiting to emerge whenever the conditions are right. The implications extend far beyond neuroscience. If consciousness can arise through such diverse pathways, it suggests that awareness may be far more common in the universe than we ever imagined. The minds we study on Earth may represent just a small sample of the possible forms that consciousness can take when complexity and organization reach the critical threshold for awareness to emerge. Every autumn, a bar-tailed godwit named E7 performs one of the most extraordinary feats of consciousness on our planet. This remarkable bird launches herself from the mudflats of Alaska and flies non-stop for 9 days and 11,200 kilometers to New Zealand, never eating, drinking, or landing. Her brain shrinks 15% during this epic journey to save energy, while specialized neurons track Earth's magnetic field lines with precision surpassing any human instrument. Yet how she knows where to go remains one of the deepest mysteries in consciousness research. Birds may literally see magnetic fields as patterns of light, overlaying their vision, quantum entanglement in certain proteins, allowing them to perceive the planet's invisible force lines. This suggests a form of sensory experience completely alien to human consciousness, a navigation system that turns the entire planet into a visible map. The Godwit's journey represents just one example of how animal consciousness operates in ways that stretch our understanding of what minds can achieve. Across the natural world, creatures routinely perform cognitive feats that seem to violate the known laws of physics and biology. They navigate across trackless oceans, predict weather patterns days in advance, and demonstrate knowledge that appears to transcend their individual experience. Consider the Arctic tern, which undertakes the longest migration of any animal, traveling from Arctic to Antarctic and back each year, a round trip of over 70,000 kilometers. These birds somehow maintain mental maps of the entire planet, navigating by stars, magnetic fields, and perhaps even infrasound, sounds too low for human hearing that travel thousands of miles through the atmosphere. Young terns make this journey for the first time with no previous experience, following routes their parents took but guided by navigation systems we're only beginning to understand. They seem to possess innate knowledge of celestial navigation, reading the positions of stars and the sun with the precision of ancient mariners, but with neural computers no larger than a marble. The mystery deepens when we consider that these birds can compensate for weather patterns, wind shifts, and even the changing positions of stars due to Earth's rotation. They're not following simple programmed routes, but making real-time calculations that would challenge our most sophisticated computers. Recent research has revealed that migrating birds may navigate using quantum mechanics. Certain proteins in their eyes, called cryptochromes, may use quantum entanglement to detect magnetic fields. When photons of light hit these proteins, they create pairs of entangled electrons, whose quantum states depend on the strength and direction of magnetic fields. This allows birds to literally see magnetism as patterns of light and shadow overlaying their visual field. If this theory proves correct, it means that every migrating bird is a living quantum computer, using the strange properties of subatomic particles to navigate across the globe. Their consciousness operates at the intersection of classical and quantum physics, processing information through mechanisms that our technology is only beginning to explore. But migration is just one example of how animal consciousness transcends our understanding of cognitive possibilities. Even more mysterious are the sleep patterns and dreams of different species, which reveal forms of awareness that challenge our assumptions about what it means to be conscious. Dolphins shut down half their brain at a time during sleep, one eye closing while the other watches for predators. This creates a form of consciousness that never fully disappears, a mind that remains partially awake throughout life. But what kind of dreams does a half-sleeping brain create? Do dolphins experience split consciousness, with one hemisphere dreaming while the other maintains vigilance? Researchers have observed sleeping dolphins displaying behaviors that suggest they're processing the day's experiences. Their partially active brains continue to produce echolocation clicks at reduced frequencies, as if they're practicing their sonar skills during rest. Some scientists speculate that dolphins may be reviewing mental maps of their territory, rehearsing hunting strategies, or even engaging in social interactions with dream companions. The mystery of dolphin consciousness extends to their remarkable ability to remain motionless for hours, hanging vertically in the water column in what researchers call logging. During these periods, dolphins appear to enter deep meditative states, their brain activity shifting to patterns, unlike anything seen in terrestrial mammals. What goes through their minds during these underwater meditation sessions remains completely unknown. Elephants present another puzzle in consciousness research. These massive creatures sleep only 3 to 4 hours per night, yet they seem to function perfectly on this minimal rest. When they do enter REM sleep, they become completely unconscious, collapsing onto their sides in positions that leave them vulnerable to predators. Their trunks go limp and sometimes twitch, suggesting dreams involving the manipulation of objects or perhaps social interactions with other elephants. But the most intriguing aspect of elephant sleep is how rarely it occurs. Elephants can go days without REM sleep, functioning normally on brief periods of standing rest. This suggests their consciousness may have evolved different requirements for restoration and memory consolidation than other mammals. Perhaps their massive brains process information differently, requiring less downtime for neural maintenance. When elephants do dream, researchers have observed rapid eye movements and subtle trunk movements that suggest they're reliving experiences from their waking hours. But with their enormous temporal lobes and complex emotional systems, elephant dreams may involve experiences far richer than anything we can imagine. They might dream of deceased family members, replay memories spanning decades, or even imagine future scenarios based on their vast accumulated knowledge. The relationship between consciousness and sleep becomes even more mysterious when we consider animals that seem to dream while awake. Octopuses display rapid color changes during rest periods that mirror the patterns they show when hunting or hiding. Their skin becomes a canvas for neural activity, possibly reflecting dream images that we can actually observe. These chromatophore displays during sleep follow recognizable patterns. Sometimes the octopus turns brown and develops bumpy skin texture, as if dreaming of camouflaging among rocks. Other times it displays the rapid color flashes associated with hunting behavior. Most remarkably, some sleeping octopuses cycle through the entire range of their color repertoire, as if reviewing all their camouflage options in a kind of dreams of possibility. The octopus sleep cycle lasts only minutes rather than hours, suggesting their consciousness operates on completely different temporal rhythms than vertebrates. They seem to process and consolidate memories much more rapidly, perhaps because their distributed nervous system can perform multiple functions simultaneously. But perhaps the deepest mysteries of animal consciousness emerge in the ocean depths, where sperm whales engage in behaviors that push the boundaries of what we consider possible for any mind. These magnificent creatures dive 3,000 feet into the abyssal darkness, hunting giant squid in environments where no light has ever penetrated. During these deep dives, sperm whales navigate by echolocation so sophisticated they can distinguish between different species of squid by the acoustic reflection of their swim bladders. They create three-dimensional sound pictures of their environment with resolution that surpasses human vision. But the cognitive demands of deep-sea hunting require mental abilities that stretch our understanding of what consciousness can achieve. Sperm whales must track their location in three-dimensional space while monitoring their oxygen supply, calculate the time needed to return to the surface, and coordinate complex hunting strategies with family members, all in absolute darkness under crushing pressure. Their brains must integrate spatial, temporal, and social information on scales that would overwhelm human cognitive capacity. Yet perhaps the most mysterious aspect of sperm whale consciousness is their communication. When researchers record these deep-diving whales, they discover elaborate click patterns lasting hours, conversations whose complexity suggests they're discussing topics far beyond simple coordination. With brains 6 times larger than human brains, sperm whales may possess forms of consciousness that operate on scales we cannot comprehend. Some researchers speculate that these giant brains allow sperm whales to maintain detailed mental models of entire ocean basins. They might remember the locations of feeding grounds discovered decades earlier, track the movements of prey species across seasons, and share knowledge accumulated over lifetimes that span centuries. The social consciousness of sperm whales appears to extend across generations. Whale clans maintain distinct dialects that persist for decades, suggesting cultural transmission of knowledge through non-genetic inheritance. Young whales learn not just how to hunt and navigate, but how to think like members of their particular social group. But sperm whale consciousness may transcend even these remarkable abilities. Some researchers have proposed that these massive brains allow for forms of awareness that include what we might call temporal consciousness, the ability to experience past, present, and future as interconnected aspects of a single mental state. If true, this would mean that sperm whales don't just remember the past and anticipate the future, they experience all temporal states simultaneously. Their consciousness might encompass their entire life history as a present reality, creating a form of awareness that exists outside the linear flow of time that constrains human experience. The mysteries of consciousness in motion extend beyond individual animals to the collective behaviors of species that seem to share information across impossible distances. Monarch butterflies undertake migrations spanning 4 generations, with individuals who have never seen their destination somehow knowing exactly where to go. Each autumn, millions of monarchs from across North America converge on specific groves in central Mexico, trees that may be identified by chemical markers, magnetic signatures, or perhaps forms of communication we haven't discovered. The butterflies that begin this journey will die en route, but their great-great-grandchildren will complete the migration to forests they've never seen, guided by information encoded in ways that transcend individual consciousness. Recent research suggests that monarchs may navigate using time-compensated sun compass navigation combined with magnetic field detection. Their antennae contain magnetite crystals that function as biological compasses, while their brains perform complex calculations to adjust for the sun's movement throughout the day. But the most remarkable aspect of monarch migration is how navigational information persists across generations. The butterflies that make the return journey north in spring are not the same individuals that flew south in autumn. Yet, somehow, the knowledge of migration routes survives through 4 generations of butterflies, suggesting a form of genetic memory that preserves conscious information across multiple lifetimes. Similar mysteries appear in the migration patterns of sea turtles, which return to the beaches where they were born after decades wandering the open ocean. Young turtles imprint on the magnetic signature of their natal beaches, creating a form of magnetic memory that guides them home across thousands of miles of trackless water. But magnetic navigation alone cannot explain how turtles find beaches that may have changed dramatically over the decades since their birth. They seem to update their mental maps during their oceanic wanderings, incorporating new magnetic, chemical, and perhaps even gravitational information into navigation systems of extraordinary sophistication. The consciousness of migrating animals operates on spatial and temporal scales that dwarf human cognitive abilities. These creatures maintain awareness of their position on a spherical planet, compensate for the effects of Earth's rotation and magnetic field variations, and coordinate their movements with celestial mechanics that govern the motion of stars and planets. Yet perhaps the most profound mystery is how these forms of consciousness emerge from neural systems that seem too small to contain such vast knowledge. The brain of a migrating warbler weighs less than a gram, yet it contains navigational information that would fill libraries. The consciousness of these tiny creatures somehow compresses the knowledge of continents into neural networks smaller than a human fingernail. This suggests that consciousness itself may be far more efficient and powerful than we have ever imagined. The minds of migrating animals may operate according to principles of information processing that our technology has yet to discover. They represent forms of awareness that achieve maximum cognitive power with minimum physical resources. As we study these mysteries of consciousness in motion, we begin to realize that the animal minds around us may possess forms of awareness that transcend our current understanding of what consciousness can achieve. They navigate by senses we cannot perceive, process information through quantum mechanical mechanisms, and maintain forms of memory that span generations. These discoveries force us to expand our definition of what consciousness can be. The minds of migrating animals suggest that awareness may be a far more fundamental and powerful phenomenon than we ever imagined. A force that can navigate planets, transcend individual lifetimes, and operate through mechanisms that blur the boundaries between physics and biology. The mystery of consciousness in motion ultimately points towards something even more profound: the possibility that awareness itself may be woven into the fabric of the universe in ways we are only beginning to discover. The navigating minds of Earth's creatures may be revealing truths about consciousness that extend far beyond our planet, offering glimpses of how awareness itself moves through space and time. In 2001, researchers studying bottlenose dolphins made a discovery that shattered our assumptions about animal consciousness. When they placed mirrors in dolphin enclosures, something remarkable happened. The dolphins immediately recognized their own reflections. They used the mirrors to inspect marks on their bodies they couldn't otherwise see, turning and twisting to examine themselves from different angles with unmistakable signs of self-recognition. But the truly unsettling discovery came when researchers continued watching. The dolphins began using mirrors for what appeared to be pure entertainment, making faces and blowing bubbles while watching their reflections. They seemed to enjoy their own image, displaying what could only be interpreted as self-amusement. This wasn't just self-awareness. It was self-entertainment, suggesting a level of consciousness that includes aesthetic pleasure in one's own existence. The mirror test had previously been passed only by humans, great apes, and elephants. But dolphins added something new to our understanding of self-awareness. They seemed to find themselves interesting, even amusing. This raises profound questions that science cannot easily answer. If dolphins know they exist as separate beings, do they contemplate their own mortality? Do they wonder about their place in the ocean's vast ecosystem? When humpback whales engage in what researchers call vigil behavior, pushing deceased calves at the surface for days, supporting them with their massive bodies, are they hoping for resurrection or performing rituals of grief? The emotional intensity of these whale funerals suggests an understanding of death that goes beyond mere social instinct. Mother whales have been observed carrying dead calves for over a week, traveling hundreds of miles while supporting the lifeless bodies with their flippers. These behaviors challenge our understanding of what animals know about life and death. The whale's actions serve no obvious biological function. They drain energy, attract predators, and prevent normal feeding behaviors. Yet the mothers persist, suggesting that something in their massive brains compels them to honor their dead in ways that transcend evolutionary programming. Recent observations have revealed even more complex whale funeral behaviors. When a whale dies, family members often gather in large groups, floating motionlessly around the body for hours. They take turns approaching the deceased, touching it gently with their flippers, and producing low-frequency vocalizations that seem to express grief. Some researchers have interpreted these gatherings as actual funeral ceremonies, complete with what might be eulogies delivered in sounds too low for human ears. But perhaps the deepest mysteries of consciousness lie in sensory experiences completely foreign to human awareness. When a mantis shrimp sees the world through eyes that detect 12 primary colors compared to our 3, what cosmic artwork fills its vision? These creatures can also perceive circular polarized light, a form of electromagnetic radiation that creates visual effects we cannot even imagine. The mantis shrimp eye is often called the most complex visual system in the animal kingdom. Each eye moves independently and contains 16 types of color receptors, compared to the 3 in human eyes. This allows them to see not just visible light, but ultraviolet and infrared radiation, creating a visual experience so alien that we lack the vocabulary to describe it. But color vision is just the beginning of the mantis shrimp's sensory abilities. They can detect the polarization of light, the direction in which light waves vibrate as they travel through space. This creates visual information, completely inaccessible to human consciousness, allowing mantis shrimp to see patterns and objects that are invisible to other animals. Some researchers speculate that polarized light vision allows mantis shrimp to see through camouflage, detect hidden prey, and navigate using polarization patterns in scattered sunlight. Their consciousness operates in visual dimensions we cannot access, processing information that exists all around us but remains forever hidden from human awareness. The sensory mysteries extend to creatures that navigate entirely by echolocation. When a bat processes the acoustic reflections of its ultrasonic calls, what kind of mental image does it create? These flying mammals can distinguish wires as thin as human hair in complete darkness, tracking multiple moving targets simultaneously while navigating through complex three-dimensional environments at high speed. Recent research suggests that bat echolocation creates spatial awareness far more detailed than human vision. Bats can see the internal structure of objects, detecting hollow spaces, density variations, and material composition through sound alone. They navigate using mental maps based entirely on acoustic information, creating a form of consciousness that exists in dimensions of echo and reflection rather than light and shadow. The bat's acoustic consciousness operates on timescales measured in milliseconds. They can detect echo delays that correspond to distances measured in centimeters, creating spatial resolution that rivals the best radar systems. But unlike technological radar, bat echolocation is integrated into a conscious experience that allows for real-time decision-making, emotional responses, and complex social interactions. Some bat species have developed forms of acoustic communication that blur the boundaries between echolocation and language. They produce calls that serve simultaneously as navigation aids and social signals, creating conversations embedded within the very sounds they use to see their world. Their consciousness seamlessly integrates spatial awareness with social communication in ways that challenge our understanding of how minds can organize information. But perhaps the most profound mystery of animal consciousness appears in the creative use of language by species that have learned human communication systems. When researchers taught gorillas sign language, they began combining words in ways that revealed minds capable of poetic thinking. Coco, the famous gorilla who mastered over 1,000 signs, created combinations that could only be described as metaphorical. She called a zebra a white tiger, described a mask as an eye hat, and when asked to describe herself, signed fine animal person. These weren't mistakes or random combinations. They were creative uses of language that revealed a mind capable of seeing connections and similarities across different categories of Combs' experience. When Coco encountered a new object for which she had no sign, she would invent descriptions that captured its essential characteristics. She called a ring a finger bracelet, described a cigarette lighter as a bottle match, and referred to a thermos as a water hot. These linguistic innovations suggest a form of consciousness that can analyze novel situations and create new meanings through symbolic thinking. Perhaps most remarkably, Coco demonstrated what linguists call displacement, the ability to discuss things not immediately present. She could talk about past events, express preferences for future activities, and even lie about her behavior when she had done something wrong. This suggests a consciousness that exists partly outside the immediate moment, capable of mental time travel and abstract reasoning. Other language-trained animals have revealed similar mysteries of consciousness. Alex, the African grey parrot, not only learned words but seemed to understand concepts like zero, something that human children don't grasp until they're 4 or 5 years old. When shown groups of objects and asked, "What's different?" about identical items, Alex would answer, "None," suggesting he understood the abstract concept of nothingness. Kanzi, a bonobo who learned to communicate using symbolic keyboards, demonstrated an understanding of grammar and syntax that suggested his consciousness could process linguistic rules rather than just memorizing word associations. He could follow complex instructions involving multiple steps and abstract concepts, and even seemed to understand when humans were discussing his behavior in his presence. These linguistic achievements raise profound questions about the nature of consciousness itself. If animals can master human language systems, create poetry, and discuss abstract concepts, what thoughts occupy their minds when they're not communicating with humans? Do they have internal monologues in sign language or symbolic representations? Do they dream in the languages they've learned? The mystery deepens when we consider animals that seem to possess knowledge that transcends their individual experience. Elephants navigate to water sources they've never visited, following routes passed down through generations of their ancestors. Their consciousness somehow preserves information across multiple lifetimes, creating a form of cultural memory that spans decades. When drought strikes the African savanna, elephant matriarchs lead their families to water sources that may not have been visited for 20 or 30 years. The routes they follow are not genetically programmed. They're learned from elder elephants who survived previous droughts. This represents a form of consciousness that extends beyond individual minds to encompass the collective memory of entire lineages. Recent research has revealed that elephant societies maintain what can only be described as oral histories. Information about dangerous areas, seasonal, resources, and migration routes is passed down through generations of matriarchs, creating cultural knowledge that accumulates over centuries. The consciousness of individual elephants becomes part of a larger collective awareness that transcends any single lifetime. Similar mysteries appear in whale societies, where song traditions persist for decades and spread across ocean basins through cultural transmission. Humpback whale songs evolve gradually over time, with new phrases and variations spreading through populations like musical fashions. Young whales learn these songs from adults, but they also contribute innovations that become part of the cultural tradition. Some researchers speculate that whale songs serve as acoustic libraries, encoding information about feeding grounds, migration routes, and perhaps even historical events in complex musical structures. If true, this would mean that whale consciousness includes forms of knowledge, preservation, and transmission that parallel human cultural institutions. The consciousness of singing whales may operate on temporal scales that dwarf human awareness. Their songs can last for hours and travel across entire ocean basins, creating communication networks that span thousands of miles. When a whale sings in the North Pacific, its voice may be heard by whales near Hawaii, creating a form of consciousness that exists on planetary scales. But perhaps the deepest mystery of all is the question of whether animal consciousness includes spiritual or transcendent experiences. When elephants stand vigil over their dead for days, when whales sing across ocean basins, when dolphins play with bubble rings for pure joy, are these behaviors pointing toward forms of awareness that transcend mere survival and reproduction? Recent observations of animal behavior suggest that many species engage in activities that serve no obvious biological function, but seem to provide aesthetic or emotional satisfaction. Dolphins create bubble rings underwater and then play with them, manipulating the shapes with careful precision. Birds collect colorful objects and arrange them in pleasing patterns. Elephants have been observed apparently enjoying music, swaying rhythmically to human songs. These behaviors suggest that consciousness may inherently tend toward experiences that transcend basic survival needs. Once awareness reaches a certain level of complexity, it may naturally seek beauty, play, and aesthetic satisfaction. The consciousness of other species may include forms of appreciation and wonder that parallel our own highest human experiences. As we probe deeper into the mysteries of animal consciousness, we discover that the minds of other species may be far stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined. They experience reality through senses we cannot access, process information through mechanisms we don't understand, and may even transcend the boundaries of individual awareness through collective consciousness and cultural transmission. The question is no longer whether animals are conscious. The evidence is overwhelming that they are. The question now is how deep these mysteries go, and what they might reveal about the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. As we explore the uncharted territories of animal awareness, we may discover that consciousness is not just more widespread than we thought, but more profound and mysterious than we ever dared imagine. The minds of other species are not simple or primitive. They are alien forms of awareness that may hold keys to understanding consciousness as a cosmic phenomenon. In learning to appreciate the full depth and mystery of animal minds, we prepare ourselves for a transformation in our understanding of what it means to be aware in a universe that may be far more conscious than we ever imagined possible. In laboratories scattered across the globe, the boundaries between species are dissolving before our eyes. At Duke University, researchers have achieved something that would have seemed like science fiction just decades ago. They connected the brain of a monkey in North Carolina to the brain of another monkey in Brazil, allowing thoughts to travel instantly across continents through fiber optic cables. The Brazilian monkey learned to control a robotic arm using signals transmitted directly from its North Carolina counterpart's brain. When the first monkey imagined moving the arm to the right, the second monkey's neural implant received those signals and translated them into the same intention. Two minds, separated by thousands of miles, sharing thoughts through technology. This breakthrough represents just the beginning of a revolution that will transform our relationship with animal consciousness. The same techniques that allow brain-to-brain communication between laboratory animals are now pointing towards something far more profound: the possibility of direct communication between human and animal consciousness. Imagine experiencing echolocation as a dolphin does, feeling the three-dimensional acoustic images that reveal not just the shape of objects but their internal structure. Picture seeing the magnetic field lines that guide migrating birds, or feeling the seismic vibrations that allow elephants to communicate across vast distances. Such experiences would transform our understanding of consciousness itself. We would discover that awareness can take forms we never imagined, that the universe contains sensory modalities and perceptual dimensions that human evolution never explored. We would learn that our own consciousness, far from being the pinnacle of awareness, is just one note in a vast symphony of different ways of experiencing existence. Brain-computer interfaces are advancing toward this extraordinary future with remarkable speed. Researchers have already demonstrated that paralyzed patients can control robotic arms through neural implants with near-perfect precision. The next generation of these devices promises to work in both directions, delivering sensory information directly to the brain. Initial experiments have allowed humans to feel touch sensations through robotic hands, to see through artificial cameras implanted in their visual cortex, and even to experience magnetic fields through implanted sensors. Each breakthrough brings us closer to the possibility of experiencing consciousness from completely alien perspectives. But the revolution in understanding animal consciousness extends far beyond brain implants and neural interfaces. Artificial intelligence systems are learning to decode the patterns hidden in animal communication with accuracy that improves daily. Computer algorithms can now identify individual wolves by their howls with 97% precision, distinguish between the regional dialects of killer whale pods, and even predict the emotional states of elephants based on their infrasonic calls. Machine learning has revealed that animal communication contains far more information than researchers ever suspected. When AI systems analyze prairie dog vocalizations, they find embedded descriptions not just of predator type and size, but detailed information about approach vectors, speed, and even the predator's recent behavior. The prairie dogs are providing real-time tactical briefings to their colonies, sharing information with precision that would impress any military strategist. Similar revelations are emerging from studies of dolphin communication. Computer analysis of dolphin signature whistles has revealed that these acoustic names contain embedded information about family relationships, emotional states, and social status. The dolphins are not just identifying themselves, they're broadcasting complex social and emotional information in ways that parallel human conversation. In Hawaii, researchers have taken the next logical step in this technological revolution. They're attempting humanity's first real conversations with another species. Using underwater speakers, they play dolphin signature whistles and analyze the responses, looking for patterns that might indicate understanding, curiosity, or even attempts at communication. The results are tantalizing. Dolphins approach the speakers when their own names are played, sometimes responding with elaborated versions of their signature whistles. They seem to be answering, perhaps asking questions of their own. For the first time in human history, we may be witnessing actual dialogue between human and animal intelligence. Other research teams are working to decode the click patterns of sperm whales, the infrasonic calls of elephants, and the complex vocalizations of birds. Early results suggest that these animals may be discussing topics far more sophisticated than simple coordination or territorial defense. They may be sharing memories, planning future activities, and even engaging in forms of artistic expression. The technological tools enabling these discoveries would have seemed miraculous to earlier generations. Brain imaging systems can now monitor the neural activity of freely moving animals, revealing the moment-by-moment flow of thoughts and decisions in wild creatures. Satellite tags track migration routes with centimeter precision, revealing navigation abilities that surpass our most sophisticated instruments. Perhaps the most promising development is the emergence of real-time translation systems for animal communication. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute have developed AI systems that can translate between different whale dialects, identifying the meanings behind specific call patterns. Early results suggest that whale songs contain referential elements, sounds that consistently refer to specific locations, food sources, or social situations. If these translation efforts succeed, we may soon be able to eavesdrop on the conversations of wild animals, finally understanding what they discuss during their elaborate vocalizations. Imagine listening to the planning sessions of hunting wolves, the navigation briefings of migrating birds, or the emotional exchanges of elephant families reuniting after separation. The philosophical implications of such capabilities are staggering. For the first time in human history, we would have access to non-human perspectives on existence itself. What do whales think about during their deep-sea dives? How do migratory birds experience their transcontinental journeys? What fears and hopes occupy the minds of creatures whose lives are so different from our own? These questions point toward discoveries that could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness itself. If we can communicate with other species and experience their forms of awareness, we may discover that consciousness is far more diverse and magnificent than we ever imagined. We might learn that each species has developed unique insights into the nature of existence, accumulated over millions of years of evolution. But the implications stretch far beyond scientific curiosity. As our understanding of animal consciousness deepens, our legal and ethical systems must evolve to reflect this new reality. In 2013, India took the extraordinary step of declaring dolphins non-human persons, granting them legal rights based on their demonstrated intelligence and self-awareness. This wasn't merely symbolic, it was legal recognition that consciousness itself, not human DNA, should be the basis for moral consideration. Other nations are following suit. New Zealand has recognized great apes as persons under law. Spain has granted limited rights to chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, and orangutans. Switzerland has amended its constitution to include the dignity of living beings, extending protection to animals based on their capacity for suffering and awareness. We are witnessing the birth of a new, legal framework that acknowledges what science has already revealed. Consciousness is not uniquely human. As our ability to communicate with other species develops, these legal protections will likely expand to include any creature that demonstrates self-awareness, emotional complexity, and the capacity for suffering. The transformation of human society is already beginning. Zoos are evolving from entertainment venues into conservation centers that prioritize animal welfare and psychological well-being. Agricultural practices are changing to acknowledge the emotional needs of farm animals. Even our relationship with wild animals is shifting, as we recognize them not as resources to be exploited, but as conscious beings deserving of respect and protection. Consider the implications if we discover that octopuses possess forms of consciousness as complex as our own, or that whale societies maintain cultural traditions spanning thousands of years. How would such discoveries change our relationship with the oceans? Would we need to establish underwater protected areas not just for biodiversity, but to preserve non-human cultures? The questions multiply as our knowledge expands. If we can communicate with dolphins, should we ask their permission before entering their territory? If elephants maintain oral histories spanning generations, should we consider them keepers of cultural heritage that deserves protection under international law? If crows can solve problems that challenge human children, should we reconsider their status as mere wildlife? These may seem like philosophical thought experiments, but they point toward practical challenges that we'll face as the barriers between human and animal consciousness continue to dissolve. We're approaching a world where the concept of animal, as distinct from human, may lose all meaning, replaced by a spectrum of consciousness that includes many different forms of awareness. The technological capabilities that will enable these transformations are advancing with breathtaking speed. Quantum computers may soon be able to simulate neural networks with sufficient complexity to model animal consciousness directly. Virtual reality systems will allow humans to experience the world through alien senses, feeling what it's like to navigate by magnetic fields or see in ultraviolet light. Biotechnology may even allow for the direct enhancement of human consciousness, expanding our sensory capabilities to include forms of awareness that other species take for granted. We might develop the ability to echolocate like dolphins, navigate by magnetic fields like birds, or communicate through infrasonic vibrations like elephants. But perhaps the most profound transformation will occur not in how we treat other species, but in how we understand ourselves. The discovery that consciousness takes countless forms across the natural world reveals that human awareness is not separate from nature, but part of a vast community of minds that spans the planet. We are not observers standing outside the natural world, but participants in a cosmic conversation that includes every conscious being. The songs of whales, the dances of bees, the conversations of elephants, these are all voices in a dialogue that began with the first stirrings of awareness billions of years ago. As we learn to understand these voices, we discover that we are not alone in our consciousness. We are part of an ancient community of minds, each contributing its own unique perspective to the ongoing exploration of what it means to be aware in a universe that seems vast and mysterious. The future promises discoveries that will continue to challenge our understanding of consciousness, intelligence, and our place in the community of life. Each breakthrough brings us closer to a profound realization. The universe is not a collection of unconscious matter, with consciousness accidentally emerging in a few species, but a reality where awareness is fundamental, expressing itself through countless different forms of life. In the decades to come, we may discover that consciousness is not limited to biological systems, but is a basic feature of reality itself, manifesting wherever sufficient complexity and organization arise. The minds we study in other species may be part of a universal phenomenon that connects all aware beings in ways we're only beginning to understand. As we stand on the threshold of these discoveries, we must prepare ourselves for revelations that will transform not just our understanding of other species, but our comprehension of consciousness itself. The journey into the minds of other creatures is ultimately a journey into the deepest mysteries of existence, an exploration that will reveal new truths about the nature of awareness and our place in the cosmic community of conscious beings. We are about to discover that the silence between species was never really silence at all, but a conversation we simply hadn't learned to hear. As we finally begin to understand these ancient voices, we prepare to join a dialogue that has been waiting for us all along, the conversation between minds that is consciousness itself, expressing itself through every aware being that has ever lived or ever will live. In learning to speak with other species, we don't just gain new knowledge, we come home to our place in the vast community of awareness that is life on Earth. We discover that we have never been alone in our consciousness, but have always been part of something infinitely larger and more wonderful than we ever dared imagine. The final frontier is not outer space, but the inner space of consciousness that connects all aware beings. And we are about to take our first steps into this undiscovered country, guided by the very creatures we once thought were beyond our understanding, welcomed into a conversation that spans species, continents, and perhaps even worlds. What we find there will change everything we thought we knew about consciousness, intelligence, and what it means to be aware in a universe that is far stranger, far more wonderful, and far more alive than we ever imagined possible.